Hey everyone, welcome to today's interview. Our guest today is the President and CEO of Gates Healthcare Associates. It's a national consulting firm providing compliance to the pharmaceutical industries. As you know, I'm an attorney, I'm a pharmacist, and I work with companies that often need help in the pharmaceutical industries. So this was a great conversation to have. We've actually had this guest before. Our guest is Ernie Gates from Gates Healthcare Associates. And this is a Darshan Talks live stream. I'm your host, Darshan Kulkarni. I do have to clarify as an attorney that neither Ernie nor I are giving you either any legal advice or clinical advice. This is just for educational purposes. If you want legal or regulatory or clinical advice that's right for you, you probably need to reach out to us, create an attorney-client or a consulting relationship that'll be right for you. If you like what you're hearing, please leave a comment, please subscribe, please share. You can ask our guest questions. I know Ernie likes answering questions. And you can find me on Twitter at Darshan Talks. Go to my website, DarshanTalks.com. You can find Ernie via his email at ernie.gates@gatesconsult.com. And I'm going to share that on the screen as well. You can go to his website, gatesconsult.com, or you can actually email him at ernie.gates@gatesconsult.com. Or you can actually reach him by phone at 978-646-0091. Ernie, how are you?
I'm doing very good. I first want to thank you so much, Darshan. After someone so devoted to trying to help educate the pharmacy industry, I want you to know I appreciate that. And anything I can do, being on this is sort of an honor for me because speaking about pharmacy is my true love.
Isn't it? I appreciate that. Thank you for your kind words. The reason I'm excited to have you is you're a wealth of information. You are a treasure trove of knowledge. So I want to hear a little bit more about what are you seeing in terms of the market right now? What is hot in the pharmacy industry?
Well, I'm a glass half full, not half empty.
Right.
And so a lot of things that I see is actually what I'm seeing. And I know we're going through some serious economical issues that are happening and some disarray in life and what COVID had done and providing a lot of negative issues. But I will tell you, during that, it was very difficult for probably any company to survive and work through this. But the bottom line is I thought, and I think what I saw is pharmacies still opening up new pharmacies, which, you hear all the bad things, but I'm here to tell you there are good things. And I see this, and we've helped a lot of these pharmacies get approved and so forth. And I'm not here to just advertise what we've done, but what we've seen that might be helpful to you folks out there that see all the negativity that's happening. I also see a whole new array of pharmacy becoming more clinical. And I spoke last time and I mentioned about the vendor. And I want to just clarify my words of speaking about vendors, pharmacists becoming vendors, because I always visualized that pharmacy shouldn't be related to a product. Pharmacy should be related to the healthcare industry. And I see more and more the shift towards that. And I guarantee you that you can hear me now, and probably a lot of you are singing the same song about it, that pharmacy right now is moving towards clinical. The training from colleges is exceptional. All the organizations, thank goodness we have organizations out there because the strength is in numbers. We as individuals become that numbers the more we participate in organizations that could help the pharmacy world and address the issues of what we're seeing changing. And change is consistent. It always will be their change. There's no way you can prevent change. But the good news to change is any operation that I've had the privilege of owning multiple companies. And whenever you think you got the right formula, things change. And you have to make sure you adapt to that change. As I said, as far as filling prescriptions and doing all the things that pharmacy and retail used to do, I see the changing with the healthcare industry getting more in clinical. I see pharmacists becoming more in collaborative practices, which is, sort of a precursor in my eyes as a vendor,
So,
a provider.
so I'm going to challenge you on this, Ernie, because I have a different view, and I'd love to get your viewpoint because I feel it is what you're describing is very much a valid viewpoint, which is pharmacists becoming more clinical. But I would think, and I'd love your perspective because you've actually lived through these changes. When I think of pharmacy, I think about the things we gave up as well. So I'm thinking about compounding. I'm thinking about industrial pharmacy, things that we were doing as a profession that we gave up so that we devote all of our resources, or what seems like the majority of our resources, to become more clinical. Do you feel like we gave up too much, or do you think it was worth it in the longer run?
No, on the contrary, especially when you speak of compounding, that's one of my triggers that, I was devoted for, because in the early 80s, when compounding took the resurgence, the interesting part about that is the last thing
I think Ernie's been having some technology issues, so hopefully he's going to be able to get back on pretty quick. So for those people who are actually listening in, I would love to hear if you guys think that compounding pharmacy is here to stay. I would actually argue that it is, but I'd be curious if people think that there's a difference, or something could be different, or we could aim for more. And we have Ernie back to talk about it. Hey, Ernie.
I'm sorry. Your picture's frozen on mine. I don't know if it's national. I
hope not, but we'll find out.
But anyways, I can hear your voice. But as I was saying, in the compounding world, that's the last thing I think will ever, as far as compounding goes, though, I will say this here. Will it be only pharmacists compounding? I think the pharmacists will be involved in the compounding. And when I say involved, they'll be strictly on new formulations. They'll be maybe in studies. More and more studies are starting to happen. So I do feel that pharmacists will always be involved in compounding. But the actual work is now, with the extension of and the new advances that technicians are taking, I think that's where you're going to see that flow of work happen. And that's not a bad thing, because, a pharmacist being, sort of vocal and speaking about what's happening to the patient, I think that's really where that the medication is going to be vital for patients to be taken, because they're taking, as you have to, in some states, you have to put down that this product was made specifically, was not intended, it's a compounded product. You have to identify that. Right. So sometimes there's apprehensions in that. The pharmacist can relieve that mind in compounding. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on compounding, because compounding is going through a lot of issues. But at the same time, these issues seem to be becoming, with the fortune of the organizations behind them, APC, ACA, those organizations are doing a phenomenal job trying to counteract some of the differences of understanding. And take a look at, here's a real reason. My prediction of way compounding is going, and it looks like we're starting to get that, is not only from the political nature and education of the politicians to understand what this is, what we do. Not only understand, in some children's hospitals, it's 70% of the prescriptions provided in hospitals. So the mere fact it's going to go away, I think that's not going to ever happen. It can't happen.
Right. So it's a good point. What I was referring to in terms of compounding is just that core nature. We move more and more towards pre-compounded medications, pre-formulated medications. And I just didn't know if we were moving so far into clinical that we were forgetting compounding. But let me ask you another question, and then we'll get back to clinical, because it has been something that APHA, ASHP, and the like have all been focused on for such a long time. And this is something that's close to my heart because of the type of work I do. but I've been seeing this resurgence in pharmacists participating in clinical trials. And the truth is, we didn't really do that. I know we used to say that pharmacists are involved in clinical research, but there really weren't in any serious, significant way outside of preparing the medication. But CVS has come out and said that they want to do clinical research. There are now organizations focusing on clinical research. Is your experience that, are you seeing that yet? Or is it still in the issue identification stage? People are still talking about it, but no actual activities are taking place.
That's an excellent point that you're bringing up, Darshan, because it's ironic because we've been involved with more pharmacies providing that service. But you know what the problem is the ones that aren't aware of that is, first of all, it's a competitive issue. So CVS is going to be involved, or whoever, and I'm not picking on CVS by any means.
Of course.
I'm saying, they're doing a good thing by adapting to change.
Yeah.
But what I would say is this, that what's happening is pharmacists don't even know that exists anymore. As far as they're concerned, it's illegal. It's illegal to do that.
Right.
So
right.
The Board of Pharmacy is going to come in and close me. But, if they understand the right way to provide that service, and the reason a lot of hospitals don't have the capability of doing that anymore because they don't have the staffing. It's like anything else. And a perfect outreach to be able to provide, studies, drug studies, is through the compounding pharmacist. It's like the perfect nature, it's like apple pie and ice cream, really. But, I hate to use that type of term, but that's really what it is. It goes so great together.
Have you seen a resurgence now of that? Because I've had to go in and do hospital pharmacy audits to get them ready for clinical research. I've written a book chapter on this topic, actually. So it is something that I know is coming up more and more, but it's one of those things that more and more is still a comparative term. It's nowhere close to, say, clinical pharmacy or even close to compounding pharmacy. So I was just curious at a practical level what you are seeing.
Well, I know pharmacies that were research only for a while.
Oh, interesting.
So that was an interesting thing. All they did was do studies because, they work with the hospitals that couldn't have provided that service, and it was overwhelming for them. So they, sort of provided that service themselves. I mean, I remember going back in 1999, 1999, when one of the pharmacies we work with was providing a service, and in order to provide that service, you had to have biotechs come in and check your pharmacy out. You had all kinds of really high-end restraints.
Yep.
And it's interesting, the mere fact that you were accredited, which, my belief is accreditation is critical, not just for the legal part of it, but it shows that extra, you're willing to go to that extra means of showing your pharmacies, up to date and more qualified. But, as far as reimbursement goes, we'd love to say that accreditation will help us with reimbursement, but it's not necessarily that's the only view you should have. So I think accreditation is critical. In fact, some accreditations, we do a lot of accreditations, and Darshan, it fits into this category. When you're accredited, you have an outside looking in. Mm-hmm. And it always is a major help because all of us, we feel we're comfortable with what we're doing, but, always look for the holes that maybe cause the problems. And that's why we're in business now because, what happens a lot of times everyone feels, including myself many years ago, but I would hire a consultant to come in because you always need to have something out there that's going to help, to say, wait a second, I'm not interested in how well I'm doing in this. I'm interested in what I don't do well in.
So as we talk about sort of where things are going and what things are happening, let's talk a little bit more about clinical pharmacy and what trends you're seeing there, because I want to get into, ideally, talk a little bit more about the DEA, because you've mentioned that has been popping up as an area of interest.
Well, again, I join multiple amounts of organizations. Now, why do I just to put my name that I'm a member. No, what it is I feel I'm supporting that as best I can. And
Right.
all of us, if we all thought about that, remember I started off saying strength is in numbers. And the more numbers you put together, the more you have to say out there, and the more strength you have when you're making statements, because it's not onesies and twosies. We may be friends with one person, but what about across the country? Do we have the right people that we can communicate with? If you even take a look now, more and more pharmacists are becoming involved in actual politics and running for office. So the good thing is all these factors require what we're going, how we're heading. We know where we're heading right now, and it's terrible to say, but I hear, some of the higher up people that pay bills for drugs, and I have to say it's their attitude is, I can't understand why we pay for pharmacists for putting pills in a bottle. They don't recognize what that pharmacist is doing. And right now, the multiple things that a pharmacist does, you know, fortunately into new things. But how much can a one guy do or one woman do, or wherever pharmacist it is getting more difficult for each pharmacy. And you got to maintain the laws. You got to make sure you understand each state you're working with. And if you're licensed in multiple states, you better understand that where those states are, everyone has idiosyncrasies about each state law, and you're filing for a license out there, you got to abide by those state laws.
But it's interesting you say that. I have clients right now who are serving their communities, and they are very excited to do that. But they've been having a hard time surviving, whether it's through COVID, whether it's through PBM pressures, whether it's through OIG, DOJ type of pressures. What advice do you give to pharmacists who are starting out? They know that they want to do better, but they don't know how to do better. How do you guide them on business practices, or do you really guide them more in the how do you start up your pharmacy part of it?
You take the day and you understand what's happening and why. What some things you can control and some things you can't. Let's take COVID. Now, if you really look at COVID, there have been so many pharmacists that we were trying to get. I know a lot of us were trying to fight for pharmacists to do the vaccinations, because they were doing vaccinations for flus and so forth. This
Right.
was a perfect. This opened up a whole army for pharmacies to have opportunity.
Right.
However, the first people were the chain stores that reacted to it right away, and it took a little bit longer for the independents to get. But the strange thing is, so many independents didn't want to do that, and there's different reasons. They may have been afraid of getting COVID more, or all that type of stuff. But if you look at some of and you talk about marketing and trying to show support, I can relate this to compounding, because no one wanted to do compounding before, and then all of a sudden they realize, whoops, hey, I'll take the work, I'll do it, because it survived them. It survived a lot of pharmacies. But in COVID, if you took a look at how many people were doing these vaccinations and more and more types of vaccines, that supported them through the COVID. Actually gave them cash flow to survive the COVID epidemic. I mean, I don't say capitalize on people's problems, but we become part of the healthcare team, recognizing as the healthcare team, not just as not when I say just as a pharmacist is it's still so important how much the pharmacist has for respect and credibility out there. The problem is you're getting now is these drugs are much more complicated, and more things have to be talked to the patients. And I say that because of compliance. You take a look at the big, there's a lot of pharmacies now are doing packaging, pill packaging. That's the new generation coming up. So when you say, when things change, we had to give up this, we had to give that. But if you give up something and you get something that you should see that's happening, why wait? and it's not a deal for you. You're going to build a Brooklyn Bridge or something like that, or you're going to buy it. I'm talking about sincerely look at things that count because they're out there. Everything can be your savior, at least to get through the parts, and then you can pick up other things in the meantime. But more and more is going to be in the clinical world. I guarantee you.
So it's funny you talk about clinical, because that can mean 100 different things. My mind mentally goes directly to hospital work. But one of the things that is a really important part of clinical is what you just sort of hinted at, which is each individual medication that's being approved seems to have all these new requirements that go along with it. Someone's got to monitor the blood sugar, someone's got to monitor the WBCs, someone's got to monitor HbA1c, whatever it is. And I guess my point is pharmacists are now fitting in and creating that critical role of dispensing with appropriate oversight, which I assume is part of the point you were making around that clinical role. Do you see a rise in specialty pharmacies with PBMs and pharmaceutical companies having to choose pharmacy networks? Or go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, please. I want you to finish.
Okay. Or do you see this as there will always be general pharmacies and then there'll be specialty pharmacies and never shall the twain meet?
It's interesting. Again, I'll go back to this here. I just we reviewing specialty pharmacy, and right now, specialty pharmacies being challenged again, like every other profession. Is what is business about? Is reimbursement to survive. If you don't get reimbursed, how do you survive?
Right.
And a lot of these, there's more states taking a look at the specialty pharmacy cost. Now, you take that within a hospital and you've got a drug that could be $700,000 a year, which is not unusual now. It's starting to see more and more of that happen. The cure it sort of takes trump over anything else that happens. Symptoms is one thing, but cure is a big thing. And so you're seeing that happen in the specialty pharmacy line, which is good. I do believe that specialty pharmacy has brought to surface of what should be expected for a pharmacy to deliver to a patient to ensure that patient is going to be compliant. And it's amazing how things offset something else or add to something else. Specialty pharmacy is a good place for pharmacy genomics, where you can take a drug, take a person and tell it that this drug doesn't work anymore. This doesn't fit you. It's not gonna work for you for any genomics type of issue. But more and more, the offshoots of these things coming out. UREC accreditation. UREC accreditation is an extremely expensive process, but you should see what they have to go through. Maybe you have, and maybe you haven't. Some of you on this podcast probably have. But the more you see what that requires, it puts you into. You talk about clinical. I mean, it's the only thing missing is, and this is going to happen sooner or later, is the addition that pharmacies, these pharmacies that are accredited can have access to the patient's medical records. Right. Because remember, that's the other thing I always say. What a pharmacist can deliver? A pharmacist can take 5 drugs and make it 2 if he watches it. There's so many reasons why people taking drugs don't even realize one's offsetting another, because they're taking multiple drugs, or they don't take them at all. And this is happening in behavioral conditions. I have a pharmacist that I'm very friendly with. His whole job is taking care of behavioral centers and doing the clinical work with them. And he goes in and he evaluates the patients, just like a consultant pharmacist does in a nursing home. So, the being aware of some of these things. I may be, talking to people that know this exists.
Converted.
But this is exactly what's happening. And when you take that, the advances that we could be in the drug dependence is enormous.
Right.
These pain. I attended a lecture just last week that showed you take all these different drug options, and what's the best for that particular patient when you take into account of their physical effects, how many drugs they're already taking, their weight and all that type of stuff, because all those drugs have a significant for treatment, have a significant good and bad interest.
So what I hear you saying is, and I'm picking on a sentence you said a few minutes ago, and we're well past time, but I kind of want to explore this just a little bit. But you made the sentence that specialty pharmacies have shown to the American patient what is possible with a pharmacy. Now, which I think is great. It demonstrates the value that a pharmacist adds. My question for you is, a specialty pharmacy is what I think of as your bespoke tailor. They can design and make the suit that is right for you. However, I think that going to the average pharmacy is more like going to anything from a Walmart to a Target to a higher end Macy's or whatever you want to call it. And you don't get that bespoke feel to your clothes anymore. My question for you is the future customization for patients, or is the future more commoditization because that's what the larger chains can afford to do?
All good questions, but the best answers I can give you is this: it's both. How do you provide the service to multi-millions of people? I always say when we have a client in the pharmacy, I said, if someone gave you all the business in your town, everything, could you handle it? So, the point is how much can a particular pharmacy, provide without causing stress and safety of the public? I think that, you got to say to yourself, this is a maximum that we can accommodate. And that means size of the pharmacy. That means, what kind of efficiencies you have in there, and still provide the patient safety. In today's day and age, it's even worse because you can't get, there's not enough staffing in a lot of places. It's very difficult to get staffing. And I know everyone on this line has felt the pain of that. I can guarantee you that. But it's like cyclical. Things go in changes where there's too many people or no people at all. It's I think what you're going to see now is that transition now that we're able to get out and overcome the restrictions that we had before. I think a little bit more activity people will be back working again, and there'll be more access to technicians like are at a premium rate right now, trying to get them. I mean, yeah. I talk to every pharmacist. The first thing they say, can you get me a technician? I'm not in the job search market, but if I find someone, I obviously would.
Absolutely.
And that's why it looks like boards of pharmacy. And boards of pharmacy are not our enemy. And that's one thing that I have to stress. I've been able to work with them, and I think they're trying their best to accommodate rules and regulations that have been overcoming because, just in Massachusetts, because of NECC, we've had to take the pendulum and swing it so far left, that it was difficult. But now, things are starting to come, that the awareness, if you can make sure that there is safety out there and there is compliance out there. And you know how you do that? There's a very simple way. Get data. We don't have enough data out there to say how great we are. I see that's a significant problem for a lot of areas, and sing the praises of what pharmacy, in the compounding world especially. It's got certain groups of people, obviously, and it's doing very, very well right now. As multiple, no one even realized how many compounding pharmacists were out there. And so they have these companies now that give out, and actually, I don't know how they've done it, but they've provided data to say how much compounding and how much is this, how much is that. And then you got your side where the FDA says, whoop, we're not going to let you compound us anymore. And then we got the other part there's venture capital people are multiple pharmacies out there that are buying, and acquisitions are going crazy. It's so something's happening out there that's demonstrating that compounding. And again, I didn't want to digress on that, but you mentioned about different things. So I thought compounding would be a great issue. Once compounding gets out there and provides the data necessary, I think the fear that is, oh yeah, the manufacturer is going to take away our issues, but I think the fear is going to be it'll be more complementary to us in the long run because we show what we can do and how good we do it.
So we can keep having this conversation, and the truth is, you're always fascinating to talk to. But we do need to cut it off. We're well past our time. My question before we go: what would be your parting words to the new pharmacists coming on? What are the opportunities out there for me?
Well, it's right now it's kind of difficulty because there's so many pharmacists out there, and the retail population is sort of, you got unfortunately, and you got big companies that are large, all automated and so forth. There's a lot of that transition, but you know what? Ultimately, if the pharmacists can hang in there and be do what they have to do to survive financially, because they come out with serious amounts of cost for college. And so they need something that's going to help support that, opportunity to pay them back. But pharmacists out there are a lot of opportunities. And the more if you could join these organizations, I know it's difficult financially, but we need to support them to help them open doors, because there's a lot of mentors. I survived because of my mentors. If I didn't have good mentors, and I think that you should try to search out mentors that are out there that can help you network so you can find these great opportunities that really are out there.
Awesome. Ernie, that was amazing. That's a great place to stop. Thank you again for coming on. I hope you'll consider coming back again soon.
Anything for you, Darshan. You've done such a great job. I appreciate it.
You're very kind.